Chapter 1: The Echoes of the Unseen. The world we see is only half the story. We navigate our days guided by light and shadow, relying on our eyes to define reality. But beneath the visible surface lies a deeper, invisible canvas, painted entirely in vibration. Sound. It is a force we cannot hold, yet it shapes everything around us. It is the gentle hum of a mother's lullaby that brings sleep, and it is the violent rumble of thunder that shakes the earth. For centuries, modern science dismissed the idea that sound could be anything more than a tool for communication or a source of art. We treated it as a passive bystander in history. But what if our ancestors knew something we are only just beginning to rediscover? What if sound was once used not just to express, but to alter reality itself? Every ancient civilization left behind tales of a strange, invisible power. They spoke of songs that could move mountains, chants that could bring down fortress walls, and words that carried the weight of physical weapons. Today, we look at these stories as myths, the colorful exaggerations of primitive minds trying to explain the unexplainable. But as we peel back the layers of history, the line between myth and reality begins to blur. The silence of the past holds an echo, and if you listen closely enough, that echo begins to sound a lot like a warning. To truly understand this, we must shift our perspective from biology to physics. The human ear is a highly limited receiver. We are deaf to the vast majority of the acoustic spectrum. Below our range of hearing lies infrasound, massive waves that can travel for thousands of miles through the earth and ocean without losing energy. Above our hearing lies ultrasound, frequencies so tightly packed they can cut through solid diamond or shatter kidney stones inside a living body. We live in a narrow corridor of perception, completely unaware of the violent acoustic battles that may be raging around us. The ancients, unburdened by the digital noise of the modern era, tuned themselves to these hidden frequencies. They understood that the universe does not communicate in words, but in resonance. Every atom, every molecule, every cellular structure has a specific frequency at which it naturally vibrates. If you can identify that frequency, and if you can replicate it with enough power, you hold the keys to creation and destruction. Chapter 2: The Trumpets of Jericho. Let us journey back thousands of years to the scorching sands of the Jordan Valley. Standing before us are the impenetrable walls of Jericho. This was not just a city, it was an absolute fortress, a marvel of ancient engineering designed to withstand any assault. Its stone barriers were thick, imposing, and seemingly eternal. No conventional army could hope to breach them. Yet, according to ancient texts, the city did not fall to battering rams, catapults, or a massive siege. It fell to a sequence of actions that sounds utterly absurd to the modern military mind. For 6 days, an army marched around the city in complete, eerie silence. No battle cries. No clashing of swords. Only the steady, rhythmic thud of thousands of footsteps baking in the heat. And ahead of them walked priests, carrying the Ark of the Covenant, blowing horns made of ram's horns. On the 7th day, the routine changed. They circled the city 7 times. And then, the silence was shattered. The priests blew a long, piercing blast on their horns, and the entire army let out a massive, unified shout. The ancient scriptures record that the moment the sound wave hit, the massive stone walls collapsed flat into the earth. For generations, this was viewed as a purely supernatural miracle. But what if we look at it through the lens of physics? What if that specific combination of a sustained, rhythmic march, the precise frequency of the horns, and the sudden, overwhelming acoustic pressure of a collective shout triggered a phenomenon we now call resonance? Every physical object has a natural frequency at which it vibrates. If you match that frequency with enough intensity, the object will tear itself apart. Did the ancients possess a hidden understanding of structural resonance, using the human voice and simple instruments to create the world's first recorded acoustic weapon? Consider the specific engineering of this event. The 6 days of silent marching were not a psychological tactic. They were a calibration phase. Thousands of soldiers walking in a synchronized, rhythmic loop acted as a massive seismic transducer. They were pumping mechanical energy directly into the bedrock beneath the city walls, establishing a baseline vibration. The horns used were called shofars, instruments capable of producing incredibly sharp, harmonic overtones that pierce through air density. When the final shout was delivered, it wasn't just a loud noise. It was a focused phase excitation. The energy stored in the vibrating bedrock from days of marching was suddenly released in perfect synchronization with the acoustic shockwave hitting the stone from above. The walls didn't just fall over, they were pulverized from the inside out, their internal molecular bonds violently torn apart by the sudden amplification of their own resonant frequency. Chapter 3: Secrets in the Stone. Jericho is not an isolated incident. If you cast your eyes across the globe, you find a recurring, baffling theme. Ancient monuments built with stones so massive that even our modern cranes would struggle to lift them. From the megaliths of Stonehenge to the towering fortresses of Peru, the question has always been the same: how did they do it? Local legends across these disparate cultures offer a surprisingly consistent answer. They don't talk about thousands of slaves pulling ropes, nor do they mention complex wooden pulleys. Instead, they talk about sound. In the highlands of Bolivia, the ancient complex of Tiwanaku stands as a monument to lost knowledge. The local Aymara legends say that the city's colossal stone blocks were transported through the air from distant quarries. How? By the sound of a trumpet. They believed that certain individuals knew how to strike a specific note that made the heaviest stones lose their weight, allowing them to float effortlessly into place. Across the ocean, in the dense jungles of Cambodia, similar stories surround the construction of Angkor Wat. In Egypt, early Arab historians recorded legends claiming that the builders of the pyramids placed sheets of papyrus inscribed with strange symbols under the massive stones. They would then strike the stone with a metal rod, causing it to emit a specific sound, after which the stone would glide through the air for a distance before settling down. To a rational mind, these stories seem like pure fantasy. But consider this. Today, scientists use acoustic levitation to suspend small objects in midair using nothing but sound waves. We are doing it now, in laboratories, on a microscale. Is it entirely impossible that an ancient civilization discovered a way to scale this technology, using the precise resonant frequencies of the earth and stone to manipulate matter itself? To achieve acoustic levitation, two sound waves must meet from opposing directions to create what is known as a standing wave. At specific points along this wave, called nodes, there is zero acoustic pressure. An object placed at a node is effectively trapped in a pocket of stillness, counteracting the downward pull of gravity. If the ancients discovered how to generate massive standing waves using acoustic reflectors, large horns, or specific geological formations, they could theoretically create macro-scale levitation fields. The papyrus sheets mentioned in Egyptian myths may not have been magical spells, but precise geometric diagrams showing exactly where to strike the stone to trigger internal acoustic nodes. By hitting the stone with a specific alloy rod, they could induce a high-frequency internal vibration that decoupled the mass of the rock from the immediate gravitational matrix of the Earth, rendering it weightless for a fleeting, measurable window of time. Chapter 4: The Maverick of Sound. To understand how these ancient secrets might work, we have to leap forward in time to the late 19th and early 20th centuries. We must look at the work of a man who bridged the gap between ancient musicology and modern physics. His name was Dr. Richard Woloschek. Woloschek was an Austrian theorist, a brilliant mind fascinated by the origins of music and its profound psychological and physiological effects on the human body. While his contemporaries viewed music merely as a cultural pastime, Woloschek saw it as something far more primal, a fundamental force deeply intertwined with human evolution and biology. He began studying the rhythmic structures of primitive tribal chants, the repetitive beats used in war rituals, and the specific frequencies employed in ancient spiritual ceremonies. Woloschek noticed that certain rhythms could induce trances, alter heart rates, and even trigger intense physical sensations of nausea, fear, or euphoria. He theorized that the human body is essentially a finely tuned biological instrument, highly sensitive to external vibrations. He wrote extensively about how collective, synchronized sound could create a state of emotional and physical resonance among large groups of people, essentially turning a crowd into a single, cohesive entity driven by a shared frequency. Woloschek's work laid the groundwork for a terrifying realization. If sound could be used to heal and unite, it could also be weaponized to manipulate and destroy. He began to look at ancient texts not as myths, but as historical accounts of acoustic technology. His research suggested that the line between a beautiful symphony and a devastating acoustic wave was incredibly thin, depending entirely on frequency and intent. Woloschek dived deep into the physics of internal organ resonance. He discovered that the human brain operates on specific electromagnetic and acoustic frequencies: alpha waves for relaxation, beta waves for alertness, and theta waves for deep sleep. He realized that if an external acoustic source could mimic these frequencies with enough intensity, it could forcibly override the brain's natural states through a process called brainwave entrainment. During his studies of ancient combat music, Woloschek noted that certain drum patterns used by Siberian shamans and Zulu warriors were engineered to mimic the exact rhythm of a panicked human heart, scaled up to a massive collective volume. By blasting an opposing force with these specific acoustic signatures, commanders could induce a state of sympathetic nervous system collapse before a single weapon was drawn. Woloschek secretly documented these findings, warning that if a modern industrial power ever automated these rhythms using mechanical amplifiers, they could control the psychological state of an entire nation with the flick of a switch. Chapter 5: The Silent Era. As the 20th century progressed, the whispers of acoustic warfare moved from the theoretical writings of scholars into the dark rooms of military laboratories. Scientists began to explore a realm of sound that exists completely outside human perception: infrasound. Infrasound consists of low-frequency vibrations that fall below 20 Hz, the absolute limit of human hearing. You cannot hear it, no matter how hard you try, but your body can feel it. During the mid-20th century, researchers experimenting with large, low-frequency acoustic pipes discovered a strange phenomenon. When the pipes were activated, workers in the laboratory suddenly began to experience severe headaches, overwhelming anxiety, and unexplainable dread. Some reported seeing shadowy figures out of the corners of their eyes, while others suffered from violent, uncontrollable shaking. The scientists realized that the infrasound was matching the resonant frequencies of the human internal organs. At 7 Hz, for example, the vibration can cause the heart and lungs to vibrate violently, leading to severe chest pain and dizziness. At another specific frequency, it causes the eyeballs to resonate, distorting vision and creating optical illusions. This is the silent terror of acoustic weaponry. It is an attack that leaves no physical marks, utilizes no visible projectiles, and gives no warning. It bypasses the ears entirely and strikes directly at the nervous system. When you look at the symptoms of infrasound exposure, the sudden, crushing sense of doom, the physical sickness, the visual distortions, it sounds exactly like the ancient descriptions of being struck by the wrath of the gods. The deeper mechanics of infrasound are chilling. Because these waves are so incredibly long, they cannot be blocked by conventional shielding. A concrete wall, a steel plate, or a military helmet offers zero protection. The low-frequency wave passes right through them as if they aren't even there. When a human body is caught in a 7 Hz infrasound field, the phenomenon of cavitation can occur on a microscopic scale within our tissue. The microscopic air bubbles present in our bloodstream and cellular fluid begin to expand and contract violently in response to the pressure changes. This causes immediate, localized cellular stress. The brain, sensing this deep internal disruption but receiving no signal from the auditory nerve, scrambles to interpret the threat. It triggers a massive, instantaneous dump of adrenaline and cortisol into the bloodstream, locking the victim into a permanent state of primal flight or fight panic. It is a weapon that turns your own evolutionary survival mechanisms against you. Chapter 6. The Singing Statues. Let us return to the ancient world, to the banks of the Nile River in Egypt. Here stand the colossi of Memnon, 2 massive stone statues depicting Pharaoh Amenhotep III. 4 centuries, these towering figures were famous throughout the Roman Empire, not just for their size, but for a bizarre phenomenon that occurred every single morning. Following an earthquake in 27 BC, the northern statue began to sing. Every day, as the first rays of the morning sun struck the stone, the monument would emit a strange, haunting sound. Visitors described it as a high-pitched whistle, a striking chord, or the breaking of a harp string. People traveled from all over the known world to witness the singing statues, believing it was a divine oracle speaking to them. Emperors, poets, and generals left inscriptions on the base of the stone, testifying to the reality of the sound. Modern historians often explain this away as a simple thermodynamic effect. The heat of the morning sun caused the dew trapped inside the porous stone to evaporate, creating friction and causing the rock to vibrate and emit a sound. Eventually, a Roman emperor repaired the statue, sealing the cracks, and the singing stopped forever. But this explanation raises a deeper question. Did the ancient architects understand this effect before the earthquake? Throughout Egypt and Central America, there are numerous temples and pyramids designed with precise acoustic properties. When you clap your hands at the base of the Mayan pyramid at Chichen Itza, the echo that returns sounds exactly like the chirp of a sacred bird. Were these structures merely grand tombs, or were they massive, passive acoustic devices engineered to harness the forces of nature, converting light, wind, and heat into specific, powerful frequencies? To understand the scope of this engineering, we must examine the specific types of stone used. The colossi of Memnon were carved from quartzite, a stone highly rich in crystalline silica. When quartz crystals are subjected to physical stress or rapid thermal expansion, they exhibit the piezoelectric effect. They generate an electrical charge. Conversely, when an electrical charge is applied, they vibrate. The thermal shock of the desert sun hitting the cold morning stone didn't just move air through cracks. It triggered a massive, localized piezoelectric discharge across the crystalline matrix of the monument. The statue was essentially a giant solid-state acoustic oscillator. The ancient Egyptians chose this specific quarry not just for its appearance, but for its energetic properties. They knew how to build self-powering acoustic transmitters that could broadcast sustained frequencies across the desert landscape, using the sun itself as the power switch. Chapter 7: The Whispering Caves. Deep beneath the surface of the Earth lies another piece of this global puzzle. In various corners of the world, we find ancient subterranean chambers engineered with mind-boggling acoustic precision. Consider the hypogeum of Hal Sarflieni on the island of Malta. This is a massive, three-tiered underground complex carved entirely out of solid limestone, dating back over 5,000 years. Deep within this labyrinth lies a room known to researchers as the Oracle Chamber. If a man speaks in this room using a low, deep voice, his words echo throughout the entire underground complex with a booming, otherworldly resonance. But if a woman speaks, or if a high pitch is used, the effect completely vanishes. Acoustic engineers testing the Oracle Chamber discovered something remarkable. The room resonates perfectly at a frequency of 111 Hz. This is not a random number. Modern neurological studies have shown that when the human brain is exposed to a sustained frequency of 111 Hz, a strange shift occurs. The activity in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logical, analytical thinking, suddenly drops. At the same time, the areas of the brain associated with emotion, creativity, and spiritual trance states are highly stimulated. The people who carved this chamber 5 millennia ago didn't just stumble upon this effect by accident. They purposely shaped the stone walls to create a precise acoustic environment capable of altering human consciousness. They created a space where sound could bypass the conscious mind, leaving the listener vulnerable, open, and deeply affected by whatever message was delivered. This 111 Hz signature is not unique to Malta. It has been detected in Newgrange in Ireland, in the ancient burial mounds of Britain, and within the deep inner chambers of the pyramids of Giza. When you sit in an environment resonating at this frequency, the auditory cortex transfers the signal to the thalamus, which regulates consciousness. The shutdown of the prefrontal cortex essentially turns off the ego, the critical voice that questions reality. In this state, an individual becomes highly suggestible, entering a waking hypnosis. If a leader or a priest stood in the Oracle Chamber, their voice amplified by the architecture, Their spoken words would be written directly into the subconscious minds of those gathered inside. It was a flawless tool for mass behavioral modification, engineered out of raw stone thousands of years before the invention of modern psychological warfare. Chapter 8: The Lost Chords of War. As we piece these fragments together, an unsettling picture begins to emerge. Throughout the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance, whispers of acoustic secrets continued to surface in the margins of history books. There are accounts from ancient China of generals who utilized massive bronze bells, not to signal retreats or advances, but to disorient the enemy. They discovered that by striking a series of enormous, specially cast bells in a specific sequence, they could create a wall of sound that caused opposing soldiers to lose their balance, drop their weapons, and become gripped by sudden panic. In Europe, the design of the great cathedrals has long raised eyebrows among alternative historians. These massive stone structures are magnificent to look at, but they are also ultimate acoustic resonators. The long, sweeping aisles, the towering vaulted ceilings, and the massive pipe organs were all designed to manipulate sound waves with absolute precision. When the lowest notes of a cathedral organ are played, they don't just fill the room, they vibrate through the stone floor into the bones of the congregation. Many of these low notes hover right on the edge of infrasound. They create a physical sensation of awe, a trembling in the chest that feels like the very presence of the divine. But what if this technology had a darker twin? What if the same knowledge used to elevate the soul in a cathedral was used on the battlefield to crush it? History is filled with references to lost chords and forbidden frequencies, sounds that were banned by rulers and religious authorities because they were deemed too powerful, too dangerous for the public to ever hear. One of the most famous examples of this is the historical ban on the tritone, also known as the diabolus in musica or the devil's interval. In medieval church music, this specific combination of notes was strictly forbidden by papal decree. Officially, the Church claimed the sound was too discordant and unholy. But looking deeper, the tritone possesses unique acoustic properties. When played loudly on acoustic instruments, it creates a phenomenon known as beating, where two close frequencies phase cancel each other, creating a pulsing, unstable low-frequency wave that acts directly on the vestibular system of the inner ear. It causes immediate physical disorientation and a sensation of falling. The ban wasn't about theology, it was about crowd control. The authorities knew that certain acoustic combinations could trigger physiological rebellion, shattering the calm, submissive state required of the population. Chapter 9. The Modern Echo. Today, the ancient science of acoustic warfare is no longer a matter of myth or hidden history. It is a reality that operates in the open, deployed on the streets of modern cities and used by navies across the world's oceans. We now have systems like the Long-Range Acoustic Device, or LRAD. This is a highly directional acoustic weapon that can emit a tightly focused beam of sound over vast distances. Unlike a traditional speaker that scatters sound in all directions, the LRAD acts like an acoustic laser. It can target a single person in a crowd, hitting them with a deafening, painful wall of sound that causes immediate disorientation, nausea, and intense physical pain, while someone standing just a few feet away hears almost nothing. In the depths of the ocean, military submarines utilize sonar systems so powerful that they can alter the behavior of marine life thousands of miles away, occasionally causing mass strandings of whales and dolphins whose internal navigation systems are shattered by the intense acoustic pressure. And then, there are the mysterious phenomena that defy easy explanation. In recent years, diplomats and embassy workers in various parts of the world have reported suffering from a strange suite of symptoms: sudden headaches, memory loss, dizziness, and a piercing ringing in the ears. The affliction, often referred to in the media as Havana syndrome, has baffled investigators. While many theories have been put forward, one of the leading explanations remains a targeted attack using directed acoustic or microwave energy. It seems the silent, invisible weapon of the ancient world has returned, refined by modern electronics but retaining the exact same terrifying essence. The technology behind Havana syndrome points to a terrifying evolution. When high-power microwave energy is pulsed at a specific frequency, it heats brain tissue by a fraction of a degree in a microsecond. This minute thermal expansion creates a localized acoustic shockwave inside the skull. The victim hears a loud, phantom clicking or buzzing sound that originates entirely within their own head. This is known as the Frey effect. It means modern weapons don't even need a speaker to hit you with sound. They can project electromagnetic energy across miles, bypassing the air completely, and force your own skull to act as the acoustic transducer. We have returned to the methods of Jericho, but instead of blowing rams' horns outside stone walls, modern systems are vibrating the very bone structures protecting our minds. Chapter 10. The Resonance of Truth. We have traveled a long road, from the crumbling stone walls of ancient Jericho to the high-tech laboratories of the modern military-industrial complex. We have looked at the singing statues of Egypt, the whispering caves of Malta, and the forgotten theories of pioneers like Dr. Richard Woloschek. When we look at these pieces individually, it is easy to dismiss them as isolated anomalies, historical curiosities, or poetic myths. But when you step back and look at the larger picture, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. The ancients were not primitive. They possessed a deep, sophisticated, and perhaps highly dangerous understanding of the vibrating nature of our reality. They understood that everything in the universe, from the smallest pebble to the human body to the very stars above, is in a constant state of vibration. And they knew that if you can control the vibration, you can control the world. Perhaps the stories of floating stones and shattered walls were not exaggerations at all. Perhaps they were literal descriptions of a lost technology, an acoustic science that we are only now beginning to reinvent. This realization forces us to question what else has been lost in the noise of history. If sound can manipulate matter, alter brain chemistry, and bring down stone fortresses, then our modern understanding of technology is profoundly incomplete. We have built a world based on combustion, electricity, and digital data, entirely forgetting the analog, vibrating foundations of the earth itself. The ancient masters didn't leave behind blueprints written on paper. They carved their blueprints directly into the dimensions of their temples, the composition of their stone monuments, and the structure of their sacred chants. As you drift off to sleep tonight, listen to the quiet sounds around you. The gentle hum of the house, the rustle of the wind outside, the rhythmic beating of your own heart. Remember that silence is never truly empty. It is merely a canvas, waiting for the right frequency to change everything.